Something we're super excited about with Coding for Entrepreneurs is we have so much of our code available and open source on github.com/coding for entrepreneurs. So this is where the code currently resides for any of our projects, or for the majority of our projects. So if you actually go into repositories, you'll see the code that's related to a project. We also have guides, so these are helpful guides for installing all types of things that are related to Coding for Entrepreneurs and coding in general. And so definitely check that out if you haven't seen it already. But as far as how you're going to use this code in your projects, you're going to go ahead and click on one of your projects, or whatever the project that you're working on. So in this case, Serve Up Membership is the project, but we also have Django Gap and 30 Days of Swift and so on and so forth. So you click on the project that you want to work with, and then you'll look and see the various code that's related to it. So anything in here is the actual code that is most up to date, right? So it's going to be the most up to date code that you'd be able to use. And then if you scroll down, you can see there's a section for lecture code. And this is going to be true on most projects that actually have lectures. Instead of just one, if it's only one lecture, then it's not going to have lecture code, obviously. But that will make sense when you're actually watching those projects, because then you'll be able to take what's said in the video and look at the lecture code itself after that video is done. So what I mean is, when you watch the login required lecture, it's titled login required, and then the code is also titled login required. So when you actually watch that lecture, at the very end of it, you can click on this one and it will show you whatever that code is. So that's going to be true for all of these. If you go to customize admin to create auto slugs, this is going to be the code that's done after that video is finished. So if you are in a point where, let's say for instance, you watched a bunch of them and for whatever reason you're getting stuck on one of the lectures and the code is just not clicking on your machine, it's just not working out well. What you can do is you could either jump ahead and grab one of those codes and then kind of work backwards, or you can just go to the next lecture possible and grab that code and then start it from there. Or even better, you grab the most recent lecture that you finished. So I just finished Custom User Model Part 1, and I went there and now I'm done with it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this code, and I'm going to download this zip file. So if I download the zip, it actually gives me this code related to this commit. So the commit has a tree up here, so it actually takes me to a completely different area for the code. Now this has to do with GitHub and all that, but basically when you want to download any particular code, you want to go based off of the commit version, so this tree up here, and that's what these links are doing, is they're really just going to a tree of this commit version. So previous commits that we've made, and being able to use that code itself. So if we double click on this code itself, we'll see that if we come in here, we have all the stuff that we would need. We have our source files, we have source, we have a README, a license, our requirements.txt, and that's all the stuff that you would need to actually get your project started. And then also be able to check the code on your local computer as well, right? So if we look into, let's say, accounts, and we look at our models.py, I can actually see this code, and it doesn't matter what computer you're on. Now on a Mac, I can preview it just by pressing spacebar, and I can see this code, and this is actually what the code is, right? So then I can use this code and reference it against what I currently am using, right? Because you might have made some errors or some issues and stuff like that. So one thing I will know about projects in particular, if there's a migrations folder and there's additional migrations in here that aren't on yours, you can go ahead and ignore those and actually delete them. And then if you do delete any of the migrations, delete this folder or the database, and then start from scratch basically. So run python manage.py, syncdb, or python manage.py, make migrations. So that is just a little bit about the GitHub stuff. Granted, we will have actual videos on pulling a project from GitHub and then using that project itself. But I did want to mention, at least while you're going through these videos, that you can actually click on any of these lectures and compare it against yours. This is really good for troubleshooting. One of the key tenets of getting better at code, after you understand how it all works by following what we do, the next part of it would be looking at code that you may have not seen in a while or have seen at all, and actually trying to figure out what's going on, right? So if I go in the URLs, I'll see like the URL patterns that I have, and I'll probably be able to do some stuff here. but that is something that you want to start practicing very early on to actually check out the code. So let's say, for instance, you finish the serve up project and you go into our repository and you want to check out one of the projects itself. So you go into a repository and you see, let's say, this e-commerce project, or better yet, let's see launch with code. We go in here and then you might want to just look at the code itself and get an idea of what's going on. What I do is I'll check out the settings and then I'll go into URLs to see how it's all mapped out. So I can kind of see how the site actually works directly from their URLs. Because if you remember, or if you don't know this yet, but you will soon, URLs is where it starts. But anyways, so that's a little bit about the GitHub. I realize this is an introduction, so you probably aren't familiar with a lot of this material yet anyway. But once you do get familiar, this GitHub is going to be a great spot for you to get much better at the code itself. Okay, so if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, let's keep going.